Now, as I have said previously, we're looking at the Quran in the Bible. They're prophetic books. One is more prophetic than the other. The other one is a book that is preserved and was preserved and reserved for the Messiah in this day and time. So when Master Fard Muhammad came to North America in 1930, he began to teach the Honorable Elijah Muhammad unveil the mysteries of the Bible, giving the meaning and the true meaning and the interpretation of those scriptures. So we want to pick up with these two books, going into a very critical aspect of the defense of the domestic life. Now, I'm going to just say a few things before we get into the text. We won't be dealing with volume 1 per se. We'll be dealing with volume 2, which is not yet available, but I will read from several chapters in volume 2. Now, in 2006, I had a correspondence with Brother Jabril Muhammad, who at that time lived in Phoenix, Arizona. And we were discussing the domestic life. I had already had a text. Last message I read the preface of how God began to guide me to write on the domestic life in 1998. I was with Brother Jabril in 1996, and our relationship involved words and books in the study of the domestic life and some discussion on that subject. In 2006, I had a substantive manuscript that I had intended on publishing on the domestic life. And in corresponding with him, he wanted me to read Closing the Gap, to put everything on hold, read Closing the Gap, and then we began a dialogue on that. It was about 1996 when we began to discuss the domestic life, some aspects of it, of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Of course, many of you did not know too much about that at that time. I'm just sharing these words with you. So again, to reinforce that my duty and obligation, I am doing that. By the grace of Allah, defending the domestic life of the Messiah. Brother Jabril, in that conversation, asked me several questions, and the key ones were, who are the wives of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and where do they live? There were some other questions, but those two resonated going back to 2006. My response to him was that I did not need to know who they were, nor did I need to know where they lived in order to defend the domestic life, because the domestic life is defended through this book, the proper understanding and the interpretation of the Holy Quran. As the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, everything we want to know we can find in a book. And our histories are written in books, as we have learned from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and many of you do not know. So, I'm here to share some things with you, and you're going to have to play catch up, because it's much more involved than what people think. It's not really complicated. But when you look at the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, you're certainly not looking at a civil rights leader, and you're not looking at just any divine man. He is of the line of the Messiah, and he, of course, as I have been saying, by the grace of Allah, is in fact the Messiah.